The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine Middleton sat quietly in the private sitting room. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the letter that had arrived just an hour ago. The official royal seal seemed to mock her as she read the contents for the third time. The words hadn't changed, but somehow she hoped they might. Prince William had left early for his royal duties, kissing her forehead gently before departing. He had no idea about the letter that now lay open on her lap. Kate's eyes welled up with tears as she realized the magnitude of what this meant for their future together. The palace walls, which had become her home and sanctuary, suddenly felt cold and imposing. She walked to the window overlooking the gardens where she and William often took their evening strolls. The memories of their laughter echoing through those paths now seemed like distant dreams. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, but she couldn't bring herself to answer any of them. How could she explain something she didn't fully understand herself? The letter contained news that would change everything they had planned. Kate had always known that marrying into the royal family would bring challenges, but she never anticipated this particular storm. Her mother had warned her about the pressures of royal life, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment of complete uncertainty. As she sat back down, Kate noticed the engagement ring on her finger catching the morning light. It had once represented hope and endless possibilities. Now it felt heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. She closed her eyes and tried to remember William's words from their engagement day about facing everything together. Those words seemed so far away now. The silence in the room was broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. Each tick seemed to echo her growing anxiety. Kate knew that when William returned, she would have to share this news with him. The thought of seeing disappointment or worry in his eyes made her heart ache even more. She picked up the letter once more, hoping against hope that she had misunderstood something. But the formal language was clear and unambiguous. This was not a misunderstanding or a mistake. This was their new reality, and they would have to navigate it together somehow. Kate stood up and walked to the mirror hanging on the opposite wall. Her reflection showed the strain she was feeling, despite her attempts to maintain composure. She had learned to present a calm exterior during her time in the public eye, but today that skill felt insufficient. The tears she had been holding back finally began to fall silently down her cheeks. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her quickly wipe her eyes and straighten her posture. But it was only a member of the household staff passing by. Kate realized she was alone with her thoughts and fears, waiting for the moment when she would no longer have to carry this burden by herself. She walked back to the window and pressed her palm against the cool glass. Outside, the world continued as normal, unaware of the turmoil inside the palace walls. Kate wondered how many other women had stood in this very spot, facing their own moments of crisis and uncertainty. The history of the royal family was filled with challenges and difficult decisions, and now she was part of that legacy. The letter rustled in the breeze from the open window as Kate made her decision. She would wait for William's return and tell him everything. Together, they would find a way through this difficult time, just as they had promised each other they would. But for now, she allowed herself these few precious moments of vulnerability before having to be strong once again. The afternoon brought no relief to Kate's troubled mind. She had tried to distract herself by reviewing her upcoming charitable engagements, but the words on the pages blurred together as her thoughts kept returning to the letter. She had folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer of her writing desk, but its presence seemed to fill the entire room. When lunchtime arrived, Kate found herself unable to eat more than a few bites. The cook had prepared her favorite salmon dish, but everything tasted like cardboard. She pushed the food around her plate, remembering how William always teased her about her healthy appetite. Today, even that sweet memory brought fresh tears to her eyes. Her private secretary knocked gently on the door, reminding her about the afternoon photo session for an upcoming magazine feature. Kate nodded and managed a weak smile, knowing that canceling would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. She excused herself to freshen up, spending extra time applying concealer under her eyes and practicing her public smile in the bathroom mirror. The makeup artist arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, chatting cheerfully about the latest fashion trends as she worked on Kate's face. Kate nodded and responded appropriately, but her mind was elsewhere. She found herself wondering if this would be one of the last times she would sit for such a session. The thought made her stomach churn with anxiety. During the photo shoot, Kate went through the motions with practiced grace. She tilted her head at the right angles, smiled warmly at the camera, and adjusted her posture according to the photographer's directions. But behind her eyes, the turmoil continued to build. The photographer complimented her natural elegance, unaware that she was fighting an internal battle with every click of the camera. Between outfit changes, Kate checked her phone hoping for a message from William. His schedule was packed with meetings about environmental initiatives, something he was passionate about. She didn't want to disturb him with her crisis, but the silence felt increasingly difficult to bear. She typed several messages but deleted each one before sending. The afternoon dragged on endlessly. After the photo session ended, Kate thanked everyone professionally and retreated to her private quarters. She sat in her favorite armchair, the one William had surprised her with last Christmas, and tried to read a book. But the words swam before her eyes as her mind raced with possibilities and fears. A gentle knock interrupted her solitude. It was her lady-in-waiting, asking if she needed anything before the evening. Kate requested tea and asked to be left undisturbed for the rest of the day. The concern in the woman's eyes was evident, but she nodded respectfully and withdrew without questions. As evening approached, Kate could hear the familiar sounds of William's return. His voice carried down the hallway as he spoke with his private secretary about tomorrow's schedule. She could hear his footsteps growing closer, and her heart began to race. The moment she had been dreading and anticipating all day was finally arriving. Kate stood up and smoothed her dress, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. She walked to the drawer and retrieved the letter, holding it carefully in her hands. The paper felt heavier now, weighted with the implications of its contents. She practiced what she would say, but every rehearsed phrase sounded inadequate in her mind. The sound of William's key in the lock made her freeze momentarily. She could hear him calling out his usual cheerful greeting, asking about her day. His voice carried the warmth and love that had sustained her through many difficult moments. But today, that beloved voice also carried the weight of what she was about to change forever. Kate positioned herself near the window where the evening light would soften the harsh reality of what she had to share. She clutched the letter against her chest, feeling her heart beating rapidly underneath. The moment of truth was approaching, and there was no turning back from what needed to be said. William's footsteps echoed down the marble hallway as he approached their private sitting room. Kate could hear him humming softly, a habit he had when he was in a particularly good mood. The sound, which usually brought her joy, now made her chest tighten with the knowledge of what she was about to destroy. He paused outside the door, probably removing his jacket and loosening his tie as he always did. Kate imagined his familiar routine and felt a wave of sadness wash over her. These small, everyday moments that made up their life together suddenly seemed precious and fragile. When William finally opened the door, his face lit up with the warm smile he reserved just for her. He started to speak about his day, mentioning a particularly successful meeting about ocean conservation, but his words trailed off when he saw her expression. His blue eyes immediately filled with concern as he took in her pale complexion and the way she stood rigidly by the window. Kate watched as his demeanor shifted from happiness to worry in a matter of seconds. He crossed the room quickly, reaching out to touch her arm gently. His voice was soft and careful as he asked what was wrong. She could see him scanning her face, trying to read the emotions she was struggling to contain. She held up the letter with a trembling hand, unable to find the words to begin. William took it from her carefully, his brow furrowing as he recognized the official seal. Kate watched his face as he read, seeing the exact moment when understanding dawned in his eyes. The color drained from his cheeks and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The silence that followed felt endless. William read the letter twice, then looked up at Kate with an expression she had never seen before. It was a mixture of shock, disappointment, and something that looked like fear. He set the letter down on the side table with deliberate care, as if it might explode if handled roughly. Kate's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. The tears she had been holding back all day began to flow freely down her cheeks. She didn't make a sound, but her shoulders shook with the force of her suppressed sobs. William immediately moved to comfort her, pulling her into his arms without a word. For several minutes they stood together in silence. William's hand moved gently through her hair while Kate cried against his chest. She could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and smell the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the subtle fragrance of the outdoors from his day of meetings. When her tears finally subsided, Kate pulled back slightly to look at William's face. His expression was thoughtful and serious, but not angry or disappointed as she had feared. Instead, there was a determination in his eyes that reminded her why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. He cupped her face gently in his hands and wiped away the remaining tears with his thumbs. William's voice was steady when he finally spoke, telling her that they would face this challenge together, just as they had promised each other. He reminded her of the vows they had made, not just in their wedding ceremony, but in the quiet moments when they had discussed the difficulties of royal life. His words were simple but filled with conviction. Kate felt a small spark of hope kindle in her chest. She had been so focused on the potential catastrophe that she had forgotten about William's strength and unwavering support. He had never failed to stand by her side, even when the press was at its most vicious or when protocol seemed impossible to navigate. They sat down together on the sofa, and William pulled Kate close to his side. He picked up the letter again and read it once more, this time aloud so they could discuss each point together. His analytical mind was already working through the implications and possible solutions, even as Kate still struggled with the emotional impact. As the evening light faded outside their window, Kate began to feel that perhaps this crisis might not destroy everything they had built together. William's calm presence and logical approach to the problem helped her see beyond her initial panic. They talked quietly about their options, weighing each possibility with careful consideration. The next morning brought a mixture of clarity and new concerns. Kate woke to find William already dressed and speaking quietly on his phone in the corner of their bedroom. She could tell from his posture and tone that he was discussing their situation with someone in his inner circle of trusted advisors. The sight both comforted and worried her. During breakfast, they maintained their usual routine of reading the morning papers, but today the normalcy felt forced. Kate noticed how William's eyes lingered on certain headlines, probably wondering if their private crisis would soon become public knowledge. The palace had always been good at keeping secrets, but some stories were too big to contain forever. William's private secretary arrived earlier than usual, carrying a thick folder of documents and wearing an expression of barely controlled stress. Kate excused herself to allow them privacy for their discussion, but she could hear the serious undertones of their conversation through the closed door. Words like precedent and constitutional implications drifted through the heavy oak panels. Kate spent the morning in her private study, trying to focus on correspondence from her charitable organizations. The children's hospital she supported was planning a new wing, and they needed her approval for the fundraising campaign. She stared at the cheerful photos of young patients and felt her heart breaking at the thought that she might not be able to see this project through to completion. A call from her mother interrupted her brooding. Kate tried to sound normal during their conversation, but her mother's intuitive nature picked up on the strain in her voice immediately. The gentle probing questions made Kate realize how much she missed having someone to confide in completely. William was her partner in this crisis, but sometimes she needed the unconditional support only a mother could provide. After lunch, William suggested they take a walk in the private gardens. It was something they often did when they needed to discuss important matters away from potential listening devices or curious staff members. The autumn air was crisp, and the falling leaves created a carpet of gold and red beneath their feet as they walked the familiar paths. William shared what his advisors had told him about their options. Each possibility came with its own set of challenges and consequences. Some paths offered hope, but required sacrifices that neither of them had ever imagined making. Other options seemed safer, but would mean accepting limitations that went against everything they believed in. Kate listened carefully to each scenario, asking questions and offering her own thoughts. She was struck by how methodical William became when facing a crisis, breaking down complex problems into manageable pieces. It was a skill that served him well in his royal duties, and she was grateful for that steadiness now. As they paused beside the rose garden where William had proposed, Kate felt overwhelmed by the symbolism of their location. That day had been filled with such hope and excitement about their future together. Now they stood in the same spot discussing possibilities that could fundamentally change the path they had chosen. William seemed to sense her thoughts and took her hand, intertwining their fingers as he had done countless times before. He reminded her that their love was the foundation that would help them survive whatever came next. His words were not just romantic sentiment, but a practical acknowledgement that they would need to rely on each other more than ever. They discussed the timing of any potential announcements and the need to control the narrative before others did it for them. William's experience with media management would be crucial in the coming weeks. Kate had learned much about handling public scrutiny during her years as a royal, but this situation would test all of her skills. A light rain began to fall as they headed back toward the palace. Kate pulled her coat closer and thought about how the weather seemed to match their mood perfectly. Everything felt uncertain and changeable, as if the ground beneath their feet was shifting with each step they took. That evening, they decided to have a quiet dinner alone instead of attending a scheduled social function. Kate was grateful for the reprieve from having to maintain a public facade. They needed this time to process everything and to strengthen their resolve for the challenges ahead. The road forward was unclear, but at least they would travel it together. 3 days had passed since the letter arrived, and Kate found herself caught between moments of hope and periods of deep anxiety. She had thrown herself into her royal duties with renewed energy, as if staying busy could somehow change their circumstances. The children's hospital visit she had scheduled was particularly meaningful, reminding her of why she had embraced her role in the first place. William had been in constant communication with constitutional experts and senior palace officials. Kate noticed the strain beginning to show on his face, though he tried to hide it from her. Dark circles had appeared under his eyes, and his usual easy laughter seemed forced during their private moments together. She worried about the pressure he was placing on himself to find a perfect solution. The most difficult part was maintaining their public appearances while processing such a personal crisis. At a charity gala the previous evening, Kate had smiled and made conversation with dozens of people, all while her mind raced with uncertainty about her future. She watched William deliver a speech about environmental conservation and marveled at his ability to focus on his duties despite everything. Their families remained unaware of the specific details, though both had noticed the subtle changes in their behavior. Kate's sister Pippa had called twice, commenting on how tired Kate sounded during their conversations. William's father had mentioned during their weekly check-in call that William seemed distracted during their recent meeting about royal protocols. Kate had started keeping a private journal during this period, writing down her thoughts and fears when they became too overwhelming to carry alone. The act of putting her emotions into words helped her organize her feelings and identify what mattered most to her. She wrote about her love for William, her commitment to their shared responsibilities, and her fears about disappointing the people who believed in them. One afternoon, while William was attending a security briefing, Kate received an unexpected visit from her former university roommate Sarah. The impromptu coffee meeting in Kate's private sitting room felt like a gift from a simpler time. Sarah's easy laughter and casual conversation reminded Kate of who she had been before royal protocols and public expectations shaped her daily life. During their visit, Sarah mentioned how much she admired Kate's grace under pressure and her ability to handle the spotlight with such dignity. The compliment made Kate realize how much she had grown since becoming a royal family member. She had developed strength she never knew she possessed, and those skills would serve her well regardless of what decisions lay ahead. That evening, William surprised Kate with dinner prepared by their private chef in the style of their first date years ago. He had recreated the small Italian restaurant atmosphere in their private dining room, complete with candles and soft music. The gesture touched Kate deeply, because it showed that despite all the official discussions and formal meetings, William still prioritized their personal connection. Over dinner, they talked about their relationship and what had drawn them together initially. William reminded Kate of her strength and resilience, qualities he had fallen in love with long before she became a duchess. They discussed their shared values and how those principles would guide them through this challenging period, regardless of the external pressures they faced. Late that night, as they lay in bed, William held Kate close and told her about a conversation he had had with his grandmother years earlier about handling difficult decisions. The Queen had advised him that sometimes the most challenging choices revealed character, rather than diminishing it. Her words had stayed with him, and he shared them now as both comfort and guidance. Kate felt a sense of peace settle over her for the first time since receiving the letter. While their situation remained complex and uncertain, she realized that her relationship with William had actually grown stronger under pressure. They were communicating more openly and supporting each other more consciously than they had in months. Looking back at their courtship and early marriage, Kate recognized that they had faced difficulties before and emerged with a deeper understanding of each other. This crisis was more serious than anything they had previously encountered, but it was not the first time they had needed to rely on their partnership to navigate uncertain waters. As she drifted off to sleep, Kate made a mental commitment to approach the coming days with courage rather than fear. Whatever decisions they made would be based on their shared values and mutual support. The outcome was still unknown, but she felt more confident about their ability to handle whatever came next. A week after the crisis began, Kate woke to find William already gone for an early morning meeting with senior palace officials. A handwritten note on his pillow explained that important developments had occurred overnight, and decisions needed to be made quickly. The formal tone of his usually warm morning messages told Kate that this day would be different from the careful planning and private discussions they had been having. Her lady-in-waiting knocked earlier than usual, carrying news that Kate's morning appointments had been quietly rearranged. The official explanation was a minor scheduling conflict, but Kate understood the real reason. Today would likely bring announcements or decisions that would change everything, and her calendar was being cleared for whatever conversations lay ahead. Kate chose her outfit carefully, selecting a dress that made her feel confident and strong. She applied her makeup with extra care, knowing that photographs taken today might be scrutinized for signs of stress or emotion. Every detail of her appearance would be analyzed and interpreted by people who thought they understood her situation. The morning newspapers carried no hint of their private struggle, but Kate noticed increased activity around the palace. Additional security personnel were positioned at strategic points, and she observed several unfamiliar cars with official license plates parked in the courtyard. The palace machinery was clearly preparing for something significant. William returned just before noon. Accompanied by his private secretary and a senior advisor, Kate recognized from important state occasions. Their expressions were serious but not grim, which Kate interpreted as a cautiously positive sign. William requested a few minutes alone with Kate before their scheduled meeting with palace officials. In their private sitting room, William explained that a solution had been proposed that neither of them had previously considered. It was unconventional and would require significant adjustments to their current lifestyle, but it offered a path forward that honored both their personal relationship and their royal obligations. The proposal had support from unexpected quarters within the establishment. Kate listened carefully as William outlined the details of this new possibility. It would mean making some sacrifices and accepting certain limitations, but it also offered opportunities they had not anticipated. The solution required them to think differently about their roles and responsibilities, but it did not require them to choose between their love and their duty. The formal meeting that followed included several senior palace officials who explained the constitutional precedents and practical implications of the proposed arrangement. Kate was impressed by the thoroughness of their research and the creativity of their approach. They had found historical examples that supported their recommendations, and they had addressed most of the concerns that had seemed insurmountable a week earlier. Questions were asked and answered with careful precision. Kate and William were given time to discuss each aspect privately before providing their responses. The officials demonstrated respect for their need to make informed decisions without pressure, though everyone understood that time was a critical factor in implementing any solution effectively. By late afternoon, Kate felt cautiously optimistic about their prospects. The proposed path forward was not what they had originally envisioned for their lives, but it preserved what mattered most to both of them. They would be able to continue their charitable work and maintain their relationship while addressing the concerns that had created this crisis. William's expertise in constitutional matters proved invaluable during the detailed discussions about implementation, timelines, and public communication strategies. Kate contributed her insights about public perception and media management, drawing on her years of experience navigating press attention. Together, they helped refine the proposal to address practical concerns. As evening approached, Kate realized that this experience had revealed new strengths in their partnership. They had faced their most serious challenge as a couple and discovered that they worked even better together under pressure. Their different skills and perspectives had complemented each other throughout the crisis, creating solutions neither could have developed alone. The final meeting of the day included discussions about timing and public announcements. Kate understood that their private struggle would soon become public knowledge, but now she felt prepared to face that scrutiny. They had a plan that they both believed in, and they had the support of key people within the royal establishment. That night, for the first time in over a week, Kate and William were able to have dinner without the weight of an unsolved crisis hanging over them. They talked about practical details and future plans, but also about how much they had learned about themselves and each other during this difficult period. The ordeal was not quite over, but they could finally see a clear path to resolution. 2 months later, Kate stood in the same spot by the window where she had waited in tears for William to return that fateful day. The morning light streaming through the glass looked exactly the same, but everything else had changed completely. The crisis that had once seemed insurmountable had been resolved through careful negotiation and creative thinking. But more importantly, it had strengthened their relationship in ways they never expected. The public announcement had been made 6 weeks earlier, accompanied by a carefully crafted statement that explained their decision and the reasoning behind it. The media response had been mixed initially, with some criticism and considerable speculation, but public support had grown as people understood the thoughtfulness and integrity behind their choice. Kate had been surprised by how many people wrote to express admiration for their courage in making difficult decisions. William's morning routine had resumed its familiar pattern, and Kate could hear him humming again as he prepared for his day. The sound brought her genuine joy now, unmarked by the anxiety that had plagued her during those dark weeks of uncertainty. They had not only survived their crisis but had emerged with a deeper understanding of their shared values and individual strengths. Their modified royal duties had proven more fulfilling than either had anticipated. The changes they had made allowed them to focus more intensively on causes they cared about deeply, while reducing some of the ceremonial obligations that had felt increasingly meaningless. Kate's work with children's charities had expanded, and William's environmental initiatives had gained new momentum and support. The constitutional experts had been proven right about the precedent they were setting. Other royal family members had approached them privately to discuss similar adjustments to their own roles and responsibilities. Kate and William had become inadvertent pioneers in modernizing the monarchy while preserving its essential functions and symbolic importance. Their families had been supportive once they understood the full situation, though Kate's mother had initially worried about the public reaction and potential criticism. Both families had come to see that the decisions had been made from strength rather than weakness, and that Kate and William had actually expanded their influence and effectiveness by being willing to challenge traditional expectations. Kate's relationship with the press had evolved as well. The respectful way she and William had handled their crisis had earned them credibility that translated into more balanced coverage of their activities. Journalists seemed to recognize that they were dealing with individuals who took their responsibilities seriously while maintaining their personal integrity. The private moments between Kate and William had become more precious as a result of nearly losing them. They made time for regular walks in the gardens where they had worked through their crisis, and these conversations had become an important part of their routine. They talked more openly about their feelings and concerns, no longer taking their partnership for granted. Kate's journal from that difficult period had become a valuable record of their growth as individuals and as a couple. Reading her entries from those dark days reminded her of how frightened and overwhelmed she had felt, but also of the inner strength she had discovered. The experience had taught her that she was more resilient and capable than she had realized. The letter that had started everything now sat in a special folder in Kate's desk, not as a painful reminder but as a symbol of how challenges could become opportunities for positive change. She occasionally reread it to remember how different her perspective had been before they found their solution, and to appreciate how much they had accomplished together. Looking toward the future, Kate felt excited about possibilities rather than anxious about uncertainties. She and William had proven to themselves that they could handle whatever challenges arose, and they had developed systems for communication and decision-making that would serve them well. Their love had been tested and had emerged stronger and more mature. As William entered the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, Kate leaned back against him and smiled. The tears that had once spoken what words couldn't were now replaced by a quiet confidence that needed no expression. They had learned that true partnership meant facing difficulties together and emerging stronger, wiser, and more committed to each other and their shared purpose. The morning sun continued to shine through their window, illuminating not just the room but also the bright future they had created together through courage, love, and unwavering commitment to their values. Their story had taken an unexpected turn, but it had led them exactly where they needed to be.